All right, so we're here with Amber Ash, who's running for re-election to the Laramie County Commission. Welcome, Amber. Glad to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And I'm Brian Martin. I'm the managing editor here at the Wyoming Tribune Eagle. Wanted to start, Amber, by having you talk to us about what specific issues or concerns have caused you to run for re-election to another term.
Well, I think, probably the one that's on everybody's mind is the fact that Wyoming's economy has definitely been hit by the decline of mineral revenue. And so as a commissioner, our budgets are affected by that from distributions from the state. And when they have to undergo cuts, we as well are faced with cuts. Most recently, we've had cuts to our DUI drug court program of 20%. Our child support section has received a $67,000 a year cut. Our cuts to our consensus funding, we lost all of our consensus funding. We're also seeing a decline in our sales tax revenue. And so I think in terms of that, it's really important that we continue to invest and diversify our economy. We've been extremely fortunate through like the Business Council and through the activities of LEADS and the McMurray development, as well as many others throughout the county in terms of helping to diversify our economy, but we still need to do more because we need to be able to sustain ourselves and be able to provide for not just our employees, but for all the expectations of the citizens of the counties to be able to maintain roads, to be able to get fire service, to be able to provide building maintenance, to be able to fund planning and the sheriff's department and the assessor's office. All those functions are dependent upon having the revenue to be able to have the people to be able to provide the service. And so we need to continue to diversify our economy. That's something I've worked very strongly on for the past 4 years. One of my more recent examples is tourism is a very strong industry right now. The fair came to us and said that they had the opportunity to have a regional jackalope club out at Archer Fairgrounds, but that they did not have the facilities that they needed. And so they needed $111,000 to provide RV hookups and a sanitary dump station. So with that, I went and worked with our, at the time, County Clerk Debbie Lathrop. And then I worked with the other commissioners and managed to get an agreement that we would fund $85,000 approximately from this SLIP funding, and then another $26,000 of that would come from our lottery funds. So our first lottery distribution was over $50,000, and we're going to take a portion of that, match it, and expand an industry that is doing very well. And the Jackalope Club has actually indicated that they'll look at bringing their national show here if this one goes well. And so I'm definitely working to promote avenues like that. I think some other things in terms of economic development would be getting the fairgrounds and the fire station out to Archer. It's the difficult thing, and anytime you're working to develop a new area, we have 160 acres available for sale. We haven't had a lot of success, and I think, when a business is looking to locate somewhere, they're looking to see how much traffic and if there's enough traffic there in order to be able to provide the business and the revenue that they need. And so part of that is getting the fair and the fire station out at Archer, so that then those lots become more attractive because there's, from the fair's perspective, it'll be a multi-event year-round recreational facility. Not just for the fair, but it'll serve a multitude of purposes. So then we can have more traffic coming in, which will hopefully make those lots more desirable. And then we attract more businesses. This in turn provides a boost to everybody who gets money from the mill levy. So as that property develops and it's no longer government tax exempt property, but it goes into the commercial sector, then they're paying taxes on it. And then all those entities that get a mill levy money in return get an increase in funding, which then helps make them more sustainable.
For sure. It sounds like you've had your hand in quite a few projects out there and some things that you'd like to see continue. What qualifications do you bring specifically to the table that you think make you yourself an effective commissioner?
I have a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's degree in public administration. Both are from the University of Wyoming. Um, I have 4 years of experience, well, I guess 3.5 at this stage. It'll be 4 by the time the next term, if I'm elected, would start, um, that I'll be bringing to the table. I have the experience as a member of the city council for 4 years. So I bring a unique perspective, and having been on the city side of the issue and now serving on the county side of the issue, understanding there's two different perspectives there and how they are work together. I think in addition that prior to being a county commissioner, I was the 21st Century Community Learning Center's program manager for the state of Wyoming. There I had about a $17 million budget. This budget tended to works under what's called the Tidings Amendment, which means at any point in time I was running 2 to 3 grants because they run on a 27-month period. And so each grant ranged, from approximately 5 to 6 million. So depending on the time of year would affect how much funding I was working with. But certainly in running a program of that size across the entire state, bring a lot of experience in the budgeting to the county. Have also done things like written grants successfully. I wrote the NASA Summer of Innovation grant, and Wyoming was one of only 4 states nationwide to be selected for that grant. And that was a statewide grant, and it was the first time that the Department of Education has really participated in that type of direct programming. And so that was a huge collaboration to pull that off. I definitely bring also the agricultural experience. I grew up on a ranch, and as part of growing up on the ranch, I own cattle. I did sell them to purchase my first home when I was 20, but I ran purebred Gelbvieh and Gelbvieh Angus Cross. I competed in FFA, showed steers there. Actually did an internship in high school in artificial insemination and in feedlot management. So,
Amber, what do you believe is the biggest challenge facing Laramie County? And after you've identified that biggest challenge, name 1 or 2 others as well.
Okay, I think I kind of covered this under the first question in terms of dealing with the budget, but I think the biggest challenge out of that becomes providing services. So how do you provide services when you have a limited pot of money to meet people's basic demands? And so I think if we take Public Works, for example, Public Works has approximately $7 million budget to work from. The majority of that comes from the 69% of the fifth penny tax that they receive. They also get funds from the gasoline tax, CRIP funding, the County Road Improvement Program. They're eligible for things like the Industrial Road Program. But $7 million over 1,500 miles of road is not a lot of money. And so it becomes very difficult, and we have to balance priorities and how are we going to maintain the roads. Sometimes this means like when we have a road blow up, so like the Alvin LaGrange Road we lost, this meant that we had to take other projects that were originally higher on the priority list, and we had to basically strike those or put them aside for the moment in order to be able to fund that project. And we were fortunate in that Del McComb and some other people helped us recruit some funding, some federal funding to be able to do that project. Without that, we probably would not have been able to do that project. And that's an important connector in our county. So, it's really easy when you're on the outside to say you need to do a better job of providing these services. But when you're on the inside and you're trying to balance all those competing interests, it's much more difficult. The same would be true of like the fire stations. I've heard criticism that we don't provide enough resources to the fire departments. And I think that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If we can build up mill levies, it makes them stronger and it provides them an ongoing revenue source. So instead of, if you give a man a fish, he eats for the day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats for life. It's kind of the same thing. If we give them the equipment, it takes care of their immediate needs. If we build them up and make them stronger, it takes care of their needs long term. And that's where that economic investment really becomes important. I think in terms of other um, other issues that are before the county, I would say one of them is balancing um, our savings versus our economic investment. Um, I think that it's really important to strike as a healthy balance between the two. The instinct when the economy isn't going the way that we want it to is to save, 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 so that as this is prolonged, we have the ability to pay the expenses. The danger in that becomes that you only have a limited amount of money that you could put into savings, and then um, when that runs out, what do you do? And so you have to find other ways to invest. And what I tell people is it's like if you invest in a stock, you don't put all of your investments in one singular stock. You diversify your portfolio so that if one stock goes bad, you have other stocks that are hopefully offsetting your losses. And I think that it's really crucial. This is really a crucial time period in which we need to continue to focus on that investment and how we do that. I think a linchpin of that, and going to my third, is um, looking at um, where we can be a stronger community partner. So looking at things like the downtown, are there ways that the county can partner with that to help promote economic growth and development, which makes the city stronger, which invariably helps the county, which then in turn invariably helps the other smaller communities. Because every time you build that tax base, it builds for everybody across the county. And I think there's a lot of confusion that, um, you know, that people don't see necessarily how all those pieces come together in order to benefit the entire county. They think it's just benefiting the city, or it's just benefiting South Cheyenne, or it's just benefiting, one section of Laramie County. And they don't see that all of us are intertwined and that we all have to work together, because otherwise, if one goes down, we're all going to go down.
Amber, can you describe your vision for Laramie County?
I think my vision would be to make us strong enough that when the state experiences the swings in the economy, that we don't continue to swing with them, that we have the ability and stability within economic diversity to ride that those waves while we're able to maintain or hopefully grow, and to be able to grow at a reasonable, moderate pace. There's also a danger there in that, um, you can have economic growth occur so quickly that your services aren't able to keep pace with that. And so you need to be able to, at the time that you're growing, you still have to consider when that growth occurs, how is it going to impact our ability to deliver services? So how are we going to maintain additional roads? How are we going to be able to provide fire services? How are we going to um, continue to be able to provide jail services? Jail services right now is a huge one because we're faced with the $15 million expansion of the jail, as well as an expansion on the courtroom in order to be able to handle those services. So as we grow, growth is great, but with growth comes cost. And so you have to find a way to balance those things. And, I think it's really important that um, as we're looking overall at our economy, that we find a way to stabilize and maintain that, so that we continue to provide strong services. I think the other part of that is really how do we keep youth here? And I think part of that, really being able to build up our tech industry, really build up, the um, both white and blue collar jobs, so that we have lots of job openings and opportunities for them to stay here and be gainfully employed, and not just be employed, but be able to provide for their families, and be um, have a comfortable quality life. Um, I think the other part of that is looking in terms of amenities. You have to balance your infrastructure needs, but that certainly also means that you have an attractive environment in which people want to live here and they want to be a part of the community. Um, I think that there's things. I talked a little bit briefly about the multi-event center we're putting out, hoping on the sixth penny to put out on the fairgrounds. Um, an extension of that would be getting the greenway connected, and not just having a cement surface where you have bikes riding and people walking, but also looking in terms of a trail. Uh, a hard surface trail that actually would allow horse riding. And so then you connect kind of those agricultural purposes with the amenity of the greenway. You extend the greenway out, you get that nice connection between the city and Archer, um, making it feel like more of an extension there, as well as the opportunity to be able to host events. So currently out at the fairgrounds, they offer the collar run every year. And so having a nice system on which to host those types of events, like 5Ks and those types of things, once again drives traffic, which once again provides the opportunity to promote business out there and to attract those types of things.
That's great. Amber, are there things that the area needs that it doesn't have right now, and how would you go about making those things a reality? You've talked about a couple of them, like the multi-purpose event center at Archer, but what does the community not have that you think it needs?
I think in terms of like basic infrastructure or in terms of like
Amenities, anything?
amenities. So in terms of the basic infrastructure side of things, there's Christensen Overpass. I think it's an important project. Um, from the county's perspective, it's on our short list for the sixth penny. We're looking at paying for half of that, and um, with the city hopefully paying the other half. Obviously, they have to go through their own process and decide what they are and are not going to fund, and that'll determine what we do there. Um, I think, and that's a really important connection, both in being able to do further development and attract further business, as well as getting that connection and that loop and that in there for fire protection and emergency response, like the sheriff, to be able to more quickly access some of those areas. Um, I think in terms of fire protection, we need to continue to look not just at fire stations, but look at how we create developments. So making sure that we have water supplies in areas where we have development occurring. Um, that can be crucial to being able to get those fires out. If you don't have water, you have a serious issue there. Um, Also looking at um, things like the jail and the courthouse that I mentioned earlier, looking in terms of amenities, I think we need to continue to build on what we have, not just in terms of um, the Greenway, also look at other tourism type things that are really successful. So recently I worked with Visit Cheyenne and Simon Contractors to get the boot down at the courthouse. Laramie County hasn't specifically participated in that program prior to. And so for us to be able to help that program and promote it and be a component of it, I think is huge. Looking at um, the multi-event center as a way to offer new events. We're talking about putting in a cement floor there, which will expand the options of what we're able to house in that building. Just really focused on, it. Sometimes we just focus on the amenity itself and not how it can help build the economy. And so really focused on how do you take a project and you make it serve not just a singular purpose, but you make it so that it contributes back to the economy either directly or indirectly.
Amber, you've talked about several of these things as well already with a six penny ballot, but if your personal priorities, what would you, if you sat here right now and just created your ideal priority list for the six penny ballot next May, what would that look like?
Um, for me specifically, the fire station out at Archer, I think is really important. Um, Not only does it enhance economic development, but it expands the LCCC program by offering residency for students who want to participate in that. In addition, it's going to reduce some of the ISO ratings for houses within a 5-mile radius, which increases both purchasing power as well as reducing insurance rates for those who reside there currently. Um, the multi-event center, I kind of explained that earlier, but the other component of that is that it will house our emergency management as well as the city county health command vehicles. The grant that was paying for the lease of the messenger building will no longer pay for that lease, which means that we have to have a way to house that equipment. And so we can either continue to lease that, but we have to fund it out of the general fund since the grant funding is no longer there, or we have to build a facility. And so this building not only serves, as I indicated in the previous question, it not only serves the um, amenity perspective and the economic development perspective, it also meets a critical infrastructure need that we have right now. Looking in terms of um, emergency communication, we have some significant gaps in terms of um, the Wyoming system. So we're looking at a possibility of 3 towers. 2 will kind of be in the middle of the county, kind of the Burns Carpenter area, and 1 out on the western side of the county. Um, in terms of economic development, once again, I think Christensen overpass, it will be very significant for that. In terms of providing better overall quality safety, looking at the firehouse software. So we went to the New World software, and for the combined communications and for the police and sheriff's department, there is a fire department component of that. So we're looking at that as a project to put on there, which will ensure that we're all using the same software and that we're able to gather better data collection, better information through that to be able to make better decisions on how we locate things. Looking in terms of just general critical needs, the jail and the courthouse remodel that I discussed earlier. Trying to think if I've missed any of the projects that are on our list here right now.
That pretty well covers it in terms of what you've already mentioned. What do you think about the possibilities to talk about some road projects on Sixth Penny? Is that the right use for Sixth Penny, or do you feel that should be kept for additional projects?
When I was actually on city council, I worked with Representative Byrd sponsored a bill, and I went up and advocated to have the Sixth Penny expanded to include general routine road maintenance. So that is certainly a project that roads are certainly a project that I think are appropriate for the Sixth Penny. I think the difficulty becomes in that once again, as a commission, you're on that 30,000 foot view and you are working, with all these different entities throughout the county to balance all of the competing needs. So roads certainly should be and are an incredibly important component of that. But you also have to look at everything else that you need. And so for me, I think Christensen Road would be a very significant project. And so we're trying to balance those out.
Can you talk to us a little bit about balancing the needs of the rural parts of the county versus the city? There's been situations in the past in my almost 18 years here where the city and the county haven't gotten along very well. County commissioners have considered themselves representatives of everyone outside of the city limits. How do you view that and that relationship between the two?
I go back to, I think it was the first question in which I said, we're all intertwined. And so, whether you're Alvin, Burns, Pine Bluffs, Egbert, Carpenter, Cheyenne, or, if you're just a rural resident, everything that's going on in one impacts the other. And so I think it's important that when you are making those decisions, that you be cognizant and aware of the fact that um, you represent everybody. We're at large, we don't have districts, and we're there to represent everybody in the county. The city is part of the county, um, as is Burns, Pine Bluffs, and Alvin. Now, granted, they have their own legal jurisdiction through home rule. We don't oversee their day-to-day affairs, but we certainly have a responsibility to everybody in the county to be a partner at the table, and to be there to provide assistance. So, for example, if you take Pine Bluffs malting, um, one of the difficulties that they were faced with was um, the county agreed to sponsor the application because even though it's in Pine Bluffs, we've handled business council grants at that level and that complexity before. Whereas for Pine Bluffs, they're a smaller community, and they haven't had those complex, difficult agreements to work through. And so we had the resources available to where we could assist Pine Bluffs in completing that. And I went and met with the um, treasurer, secretary, auditor, along with leads to be able to provide, talk about why that project is important and why I thought that they should vote for it, as well as attending the actual SLIM meeting for that. And so I think once again, that goes back to um, value-added agriculture in turn. Um, if we're successful in this project, we can replicate it in other places, and not just in Laramie County, but in Wyoming, and be able to continue to promote and enhance our agricultural industry, which is a significant contributor to Laramie County. Um, and so I think it's really important that we recognize that we are all here for the benefit of the taxpayer, and that we owe it to the taxpayer to work together to ensure that we are providing quality resources.
We do have just a couple more minutes. Can you speak to any amenities for families or young professionals that you think ought to be provided in Cheyenne, Laramie County that are not right now?
I feel kind of repetitive, but
That's okay.
I think that the fairgrounds is really important, um, in both in terms of the fact that it is the multi-event center, but also in terms of the fact that, as I just said, agriculture is such an important component of Laramie County. And for some kids, this is really their first true exposure, whether it be raising rabbits, raising cattle, whatever. If they're When I was at school, I did farm ranch business mechanics. I did competed in sales and competed in business management. So there's all these life skills, but it's also that um, opportunity for kids to be able to participate and interact, and garner those life experiences through that venue. I think the Greenway relevancy in the community is, you see it all the time. You see more and more riders, more and more people using it. I think being able to reasonably expand, obviously it's expensive to build those types of trails, but to be able to expand that where it makes sense to do so, like out to the Archer and the fairgrounds, is something that we should be doing, as well as like in South Cheyenne area, um, you know, and some of that also comes in terms of providing, um, not only is it a greenway expansion, but a lot of times they double over as safe routes to school so that children can walk back and forth to school. Um, I think really working in terms of um, additional amenities, you would probably look at, like the Children's Museum might be the type of amenity. But I don't agree with it being on the seventh penny in November. The commission offered it a spot um, on the six penny, or offered to try and make that happen for them on the six penny and move them in May with the other election. I think having those types of amenities are really important. The Children's Museum in and of itself, I don't necessarily think is an economic driver. Um, it really is more of an amenity, but I think it's a type of amenity that attracts young families here, which we discussed earlier, the need to continue to be able to do that, and do a better job of that. Um, and just speaking as a parent, I think it really provides, um, you know, a, the winters are cold here, and we get a lot of snow, and I think we have to balance both our outdoor recreational amenities as well as our indoor recreational amenities. But they also have to be sustainable. You know, we don't have an endless bucket of money from which to pay for all of this, and so we have to make all of that come together, and that's all of the elected officials working together.
That's great. Amber, our time's up. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that we haven't discussed today?
I have a Facebook page. It's Amber Ashford, Laramie County Commissioner. So if there are issues that people viewing this video would have questions on or would like more information on, you can reach me there. I can be reached via phone 630-9470. And then my email address is ms.amberash@gmail.com.
Great. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you.
We really appreciate it.